Kia has 10 electrified utility vehicles to choose from. Whether you're ready to take a Kia Sportage Turbo Hybrid on a road trip, a professional looking to navigate traffic in an EV9, or someone who wants electric for every day and fuel for far away with a Sorento plug-in hybrid, Kia has something for you. Find out more at your local Kia showroom today. Kia, movement that inspires.
Call 800-333-4KIA for details. Always drive safely. The 2025 Sorento PHEV has an EPA estimated all-electric range of 31 miles on a full battery charge. Actual range will vary.
You know what it is. That's right. It's time to talk money with your money nerd and financial coach. Now, tighten those purse strings and open those ears. It's the Money Talk with Tiff podcast.
Hey everyone, I am so excited because I have, actually, this is like this brother's fourth time on the podcast. He's been on the podcast the most times out of everybody else. I have Mr. Rakim Sabri on the line, and he's here to talk to us about financial trauma. He is an expert, and I'm excited for this conversation. So, hey, Rakim, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be back.
Yes, thank you for coming back. I'm excited for this conversation because we nerd out on, this trauma thing all the time, but I really want my audience to know what it is and why they should care. So let's just start there. What is financial trauma and why should people care to talk about it or learn more about it?
Yeah, so financial trauma is any instance observed or experienced that has a negative impact on the way you view, interact with, or believe about money. So this is the running definition that I've been using since, I think, 2022. And what's great about this definition is that it's not just focused on the direct experiences of the individual, right? So I talk about 6 sources of financial trauma, from generational and genetic financial trauma to vicarious and observational financial trauma to poverty and financial instability to workplace and employment to institutional systemic, and lastly, family, societal, or religious. And when I look at the vicarious or observational forms of financial trauma or the institutional or systemic forms of financial trauma, those two specifically can exist or can impact you rather without you having a direct negative experience with money, right? So as Black people, right, navigating the United States and the capitalistic systems and racist systems that we navigate, we may never experience poverty, right? There are those of us who've never experienced poverty. But still can be impacted by the policies of the institutions that we navigate, of the systems that we navigate. And so my definition of financial trauma is very broad. It involves multiple lenses. And so going into your second question, why should we care about it? Because it touches everybody, right? It impacts everybody. I think one of the things that I've realized in some of the trauma research that I've been doing and tying it into financial trauma specifically is that everybody touches it, everybody experiences it. And that can sound depressing, I think, and daunting to some people, right? Like, okay, if we're all experiencing financial trauma, what can we do about it? But I think really the point here in the way that I'm framing financial trauma is that we should shift our perspective on financial trauma from a first person individualistic issue to a societal one.
Gotcha. Yeah, because, if anybody's tapped in online to these conversations, usually you hear people talk about, the individual person's financial trauma. Oh, you should, think about your money scripts. And, a lot of people aren't really talking about the institutional part. So when we're like, for instance, if there's audience members listening, is that where you believe we should start? And if so, how?
Good question. I don't think it's where we should start. I think that broadly, all 6 sources of financial trauma should be introduced, should be discussed, should be made aware of in conversations with audiences. In terms of what it is that we can do to start, I think that exposure piece. So I walk people through a 3-part framework that I call the 3 E's, exposure being the first part of that framework. And in that exposure piece, I talk about the 6 sources of financial trauma because I think when we start to name things, label things, things that maybe we have experienced or have had experiences with, and connect the dots, there is often that aha or light bulb moment that people say, "Oh, I've been dealing with this my whole life." Exactly, right? Like that's the revelation that I want you to have. But then moving into the other parts of the framework, which are education and execution, there is kind of this reckoning, if you will, around what are the things that we have the ability to influence ourselves as individuals, and what are the things that involve kind of a collective lift, if you will, in addressing. And so institutional and systemic are, we can philosophize around over this, all day, but institutional and systemic are things that would not be within our immediate ability to change. But I do think that it is still important to discuss in recognizing what are the impacts on our nervous system, what are the impacts on our money behaviors, what are the impacts on what it is that we believe about money. Because I'll just give an example. Through an institutional or systemic lens, if we can recognize that there is the weaponization of our feelings leveraged in advertisements that tell us in order for us to feel, be, experience, etc., that we need to spend money. And we're scrolling our phones all day, or we're on the tablet or the computer all day, and we're constantly being bombarded with advertising that we eventually end up yielding to and making a purchase around. How much of that decision was a decision that we made consciously, and how much of that decision was a decision that we made based off of the nudges that we're experiencing, right? And so when we are looking to regulate our nervous systems, because I view financial trauma as an embodied experience, by spending money, and the solution that is put in front of us is a money exchange solution, right? Us spending money, then that is an assault on our person, right? Because and you and I nerd out about this often offline. In recognizing a regulated or a whole person, we don't necessarily need to spend money to do that, right? We can go outside, we can feel the grass beneath our feet, we can inhale, God's good air, right? But we're constantly socialized and programmed to think that we have to spend money in order to move closer to this feeling of wholeness. And in being able to point to that and say, okay, this is what's going on. This is the playbook, if you will. I am going to consciously and intentionally decide not to opt into that system, and instead do things that will naturally regulate my nervous system, like say affirmations, like practice breathing exercises, like engage in movement, engage with nature, engage with other human beings. Then that is a step that we can take in the direction of healing that have ultimately financial.
Kia has 10 electrified utility vehicles to choose from. Whether you're ready to take a Kia Sportage Turbo Hybrid on a road trip, a professional looking to navigate traffic in an EV9, or someone who wants electric for every day and fuel for far away with a Sorento plug-in hybrid, Kia has something for you. Find out more at your local Kia showroom today. Kia, movement that inspires.
Call 800-334-KIA for details. Always drive safely. The 2025 Sorento PHEV has an EPA estimated all-electric range of 31 miles on a full battery charge. Actual range will vary.
Implications.
All right. If someone is listening and they're like, okay, Rakim, I hear you. This sounds great. We've talked about affirmations and I've heard all of this before, but how does this impact my money? What is a specific example you can give us on how it could affect someone and maybe they can connect with that?
Yeah, great question. I think I'll use popular culture as an example right now, right? So in the news cycles, we're hearing a lot about financial stress and financial anxiety. We're hearing some of the solutions being offered to those things as more budgeting, right? Which, budgeting certainly has its place. But when we look at the evolutionary stress responses of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, right? Our brain does not have the ability to distinguish between a real or an imagined threat. So if somebody comes back and says, "Hey, this sounds very woo-woo, like, how do I have my feet on the ground in understanding this framework?" I would go back to pointing at the financial anxiety, the financial stress that we're seeing be even more so prevalent because it's been named in everyday users, but also in the media cycles, the news cycles, what's being popularly kind of tossed around among financial educators and financial influencers as the example of, or the embodiment of, what these experiences look like, right? If if your brain does not have the ability to distinguish between a real or an imagined threat, and you open up a past due, let's call it credit card bill, right? The sense of panic that you experience throws you into the evolutionary fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. In that response, you may be operating from a place, and I'm just kind of reference the triune brain framework. You may be operating from a place of the lower part of your brain where the amygdala rests, and be perceiving this as a threat. Even though there's no like lion, tiger, or bear standing in front of you, the credit card bill, the past due credit card bill represents a threat to you. And so because we're not socialized to view money as a threat, or to view our body's responses to money as the evolutionary stress response, we learn to just kind of sweep it under the rug. We store these responses to money and the perceived or real or imagined threat, as I've been phrasing it, in our bodies, and it sits there unmetabolized. So follow up with the way that shows up in our bodies, and why that matters, not only in our life experience that we have right now, but in the future generations, is with the rise of the study. I know I'm throwing out a lot of big terms, but with the rise of the study of epigenetics through a trauma lens, there's evidence that supports that the expression of genes change based off of the increases in stress or the experience of trauma. So not the physical makeup of the gene or the physical construction of the gene, but the way that gene is expressed changes in our lifetime, but also changes in the lifetimes of our future generations, our children. And so that impacts your money by way of how you respond to stress, or how you are responding to stress. You may be impacted by the change in gene expression from previous generations, your parents, your grandparents, your tolerance around resilience, or your window of resilience, or your tolerance of the biochemical responses that exist within you, responses to cortisol or adrenaline, and how you perceive threats may change. And as a result, you engage in this cycle of financial avoidance or shame that says, okay, I'm experiencing shame, I'm experiencing avoidance, and I want to solve this problem because I feel uncomfortable, right? Your brain's primary function is to establish safety for you. So I want to find the quickest, most painless way out of this situation. I'm going to spend my money on insert item here, right? So when we talk about the prevalence of like retail therapy, or now we're starting to see an increase in instances of people engaging in sports betting, or even if we look at it from a purely financial education lens, what does adoption look like for individuals jumping into the world of crypto, or individuals jumping into the world of trading, or individuals jumping into the world of investing that is through a misinformed lens, or through a lens of desperation that says, I don't like the way that I'm feeling right now. I'm uncomfortable right now. I'm going to do anything that I can to make myself feel better about this situation. And so you see people engaging in these practices in very much the same way that we see people going out and buying a lottery ticket, right? they're throwing this Hail Mary pass, if you will, and looking for salvation through a lens of nervous system dysregulation. And so the reason why we should care about financial trauma and how that shows up, how in individuals, how that shows up in individuals' businesses, is because the way that we use money, or the way that we learn to use money, is not necessarily this binary black and white, good financial decision, bad financial decision approach, but more so, how do I establish safety in my body by using money? And if we don't have these conversations around what people are currently engaged in an effort to establish safety through their money, then they will continue to exist in these cycles and not recognize or understand why.
So Rakim, thank you so much for this breakdown. I know you just wrote a book about this. So can you tell us more about the book and where we could find it?
Yeah, so the book is due to release November of 2025, but it is available for pre-order pretty much everywhere books are sold. So that's your Amazon, your Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Bookshop if you want to support independent bookstore. And I spent the last, I want to say 6 months or so, really doing a deep dive on understanding trauma generalized, and specifically applying that to a financial lens. So everything that I've talked about, the identification of the 6 sources of financial trauma, working through the 4 steps to financial healing, and really talking people through my framework has been the distilling process of getting this information out there. And as you can imagine, all of the information is swimming around in my head. So I nerd out about this topic quite often, sometimes to a greater degree than necessary.
Gotcha. And I'll make sure I have all of those links in the show notes for our audience. I know I'm definitely going to get my copy because this is speaking my language, and I stress the importance of financial trauma to people all the time. So now I have a resource that I can send them to. So thank you so much, Rakim. And also, if people wanted to learn more about you or your platform, where could they find you on social media or website?
My website is RakimSabri.com, and that links to all of my socials. But I'm present on pretty much all of the primary socials at Rakim Sabri. So that's my name, RAHKIMSABREE. Most active on LinkedIn and Instagram, but I am on Twitter and Facebook and all the others.
Perfect. And I'll be sure to add those to the show notes as well. So thank you so much, Rakim, for coming on the show today. It's always an honor to have you. I'll make sure I also link to your previous episodes in the show notes as well. And thank you so much for being a repeat guest and a supporter of the show.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, joining, and being a part of the Money Talk with Tiff podcast this week. You can check Tiff out every Thursday for a new Money Talk podcast. But if you just can't wait until next week, you can listen to previous podcast episodes at moneytalkwitht.com or follow Tiff on all social media platforms at Money Talk with T. Until next time, spend wise by spending less than you make. A word to the money wise is always sufficient.
Kia has 10 electrified utility vehicles to choose from. Whether you're ready to take a Kia Sportage Turbo Hybrid on a road trip, a professional looking to navigate traffic in an EV9, or someone who wants electric for every day and fuel for far away with a Sorento plug-in hybrid, Kia has something for you. Find out more at your local Kia showroom today. Kia, movement that inspires.
Call 800-333-4KIA for details. Always drive safely. The 2025 Sorento PHEV has an EPA estimated all-electric range of 31 miles on a full battery charge. Actual range will vary.